The first order of business in making my free energy over unity device predicated on the Joseph Newman concept as predicated on the Byron Brubaker concept, inspired by Joseph Newman's device. That's really the way to phrase it. But I've, made a few modifications, not too much, because I'm trying to achieve or come close to. I'm trying to come close to achieving an ideal transformer in as much as the transformer itself should contribute something in order to make up for its losses. And maybe if it contributes enough in conjunction with how the circuit that is exterior to the transformer is attached to the transformer, maybe it'll be over unity. So the first order of business is safety. We don't want the nodes, the nodal voltages to rise significantly above, above ambient voltages in the environment, or else you create immediately a voltage risk that'll ground out through you or whatever and create catastrophes. So one of the ends of a 12-inch long fluorescent tube should be grounded to the earth. And to that end, I've started off with a box that has a base of aluminum foil that you get from the hardware store. It's aluminum on one side and glue on the other, and you peel off the paper backing. So it goes from the base of the box, where that one end of the oh, I'm gonna have to extend this to the middle. Okay, yeah, I remember now. Okay, so I'm gonna have to extend that tape to the middle of the box, and then so it goes up, and then it goes over and towards the bottom. So if you were to lay it on concrete that is not painted, unlike this concrete that is painted, you could have a ground connection to the earth. And so one end of the fluorescent tube will be grounded to the earth. But this I have to extend to the middle. Now I realize. Well, as I said before, I made the mistake of not extending to the middle of the bottom of the box. And so I put an extra piece, and I was worried about how am I going to connect the two pieces. And I tested it with my continuity tester, and they connect. They have resistance. So apparently the aluminum tape is conductive on both sides, even through the glue that's on the underside. So the glue must be conductive. That's pretty cool. Whatever. Now I've wrapped aluminum foil, a strip around the one end of my fluorescent tube, scrunched it and folded it down so I could tape it to the tape down at the bottom. And I sealed this end with painter's tape, and I chose the end that's opposite the labeling. There's labeling on the opposite side of this. Can you see it? There it is. So I chose the side that's opposite that. And I'm going to use the cardboard sleeve it comes in to wrap the coil around. I need a dielectric medium, and I might as well use this. It slips very nicely. Although I could use paper. What kind of paper? Paper. Yeah, I have paper. That's true. All right. Oh, I know. I could use this for something else to support it. Yeah, I think I'm going to use 8x11 paper that we type on. I have some scrap paper here, and I'll use that for my sleeve to wrap the coils around. So I need an open coil that I'm going to use aluminum, and then I'm going to use a mixture of iron wire, multi-filered with two insulated copper wires, and I need very little inductance. So it'll be able to occupy a very short distance of width along here so that I can slide it up and down to vary the voltage of this fluorescent tube, because it's only going to be connected here to the ground, and then the coils are going to be wrapped around it. So I want one end to be grounded to the earth, and then I want to vary the amount of voltage I'm allowed to accumulate inside the system, the entire circuit. And so I figure I'm going to do it like a tuning coil on the old style crystal radios. Instead of using a coil, which is a conductive medium, I'm using the fluorescent tube, which is also a conductive medium. Even when it's not lit, it's still conductive. It's just proto or pre-arcing, but it still creates ionization. It's just we don't see it because it doesn't light up. And so I'm going to slide it up and down. And so this end I have to seal with tape, a dielectric medium, to prevent arcing coming out of the top. Because I don't think I want that. Although I could keep it bare, that's true. I might do that. I'll try keeping it bare. Yeah, because I want a voltage difference along the length of this, so I have to keep it bare. Okay. I could even make an aerial extend off the top if I want extra, if I'm not getting enough variation along this or something, I don't know. And then I short out the two copper windings that are going to be intertwined with the bare iron wire with a capacitor. I have two capacitors there of 0.33 microfarads each. Each capacitor will short out each side or each end of the pair of copper windings. So I'm shorting out both sides of a transformer with a capacitor. And then I'm varying how much influence does the fluorescent tube inject into the circuit, how much voltage difference along its length. And one end is grounded to the earth to prevent the whole thing, all the nodal voltages, from rising precipitously to infinite oblivion. I don't want that to happen. I don't want the glass bulb to shatter and fling its shards of glass in all directions, embedding it in my eyes, in my lungs. That would be nasty. Might be a painful way to die, basically. So that's why I have to ground one end. And if I don't have a surface, a concrete surface to lay the box on, I have grounding wire. I'll get out and show you, that I bought from a website that specializes in providing products for people who are sensitive to electromagnetism. And it's basically a plug, and the two prongs are not connected to anything. They just fit inside your electric socket. And then the third prong, the round one that goes into the ground port on the wall outlet, that's actually connected to the single wire that has an eye hook, and you can attach that then to whatever you want to be grounded. So now we'll proceed with the next steps in this procedure of construction. I decided against using my aluminum coil of wire for my open coil, simply because I mixed things up by mistake. So instead I used zinc galvanized bare iron wire as my open coil. And so now I have two coils of copper insulated wire I'm going to wrap on top of this sliding piece. So this slides up and down. So now I've cut two coils of equal length, one green colored insulation and the other blue or light blue. And I think they're 28 gauge, I'm not sure. Somewhere around in there. It's let's see, does it say on the roll? It doesn't say on the roll. Let's see if it says on the box that it came in. Yeah, I think it says on the box that it came in. I get different colors to choose from. 28. Yeah, that's 28. Whoopsies. I think I have to zoom in. 28 gauge, stranded, who ammeter, whatever that means. 300 volts. Ooh, look at that. New. Well, it's not new anymore. So it comes in a box of 6 different colors: white, yellow, black, red, green, and light blue. So that's what I'm going to use for my copper windings. And here's the goal of this project, is to power this RAV4 EV from 2002, whose nickel metal hydride batteries are dead and incapable of holding a charge. That's the ultimate goal. Run it without batteries, or revive the batteries. That's a different video I'm not going to get into at the moment. I'm going to use the sticky side of tape to clean up the mess I made, taking the insulation off of one end of this wire, in which I used a packing knife. The reason why I chose to use whatever capacitors I had on hand, the smallest available, 0.33 microfarads, is because I figured, well, maybe if I had been more patient, the simulator would have given me results. It just would have taken longer had I not used such small capacitors, such as I did, that were a fraction of a femtofarad, like way, way down, or nothing less than a femtofarad. And the coil winding was 70 nanohenries. So I think it doesn't matter in a sense. It just matters how patient you are to wait for the voltage to build up. And that means there might be a very slow reaction time when you vary your inductance of the fluorescent tube, conductance. So I wrapped it, I think, twice, and the kind of coilies here. So I got the open iron coil inside, the zinc galvanized iron coil underneath the tape. And I have the backing of this aluminum tape, the paper backing, which is coated with something on both sides to make it easy for the tape to stick to it. I use that paper, not the tape, but the paper separated from the tape, threw away the tape, to serve as the dielectric paper surface that is the lowest layer of this wrapping, so that it easily slides on the glass tube. And then I wrap the open coil of iron wire twice, or 3-4 times, I think, around that, and then place these coils on there. So now I have to put the capacitors attached to this, because I didn't make the wire long enough to go all the way down to the bottom. So now I have to attach the capacitors up here and tape it to the slider, and then seal the whole thing. So it's going to be kind of bulky. So I wrapped aluminum foil, or foil tape, around the strand, the end, if I can get my fingers on it, the end of this green wire that I had taken off the insulation. I first wrapped that around the rod that sticks out, the electrode of the capacitor that sticks out, wrapped it around, and then wrapped the tape around it. And now I'm going to use paper tape to hold this against the capacitor so it doesn't slip off the electrode of the capacitor. I just realized something in working with the aluminum foil tape from the hardware store. It's got adhesive on one side. It's actually stronger than the copper tape that I had previously been working with, probably because aluminum is cheaper, and so they make it thicker, and it's a hardware store item, and so they want it to be stronger for construction workers or electricians, whoever buys the stuff, to be able to work with it and not readily rip. Whereas the copper tape readily does rip and makes it very not suitable for forming connections if you're not soldering. If you're using tape, masking, or painter's tape like I am, and then underneath that the aluminum tape to make the connection, and then the painter's tape to hold it in place. Alright, I finished attaching the capacitors, and I put extra tape on the ends, the corners, where the electrodes go to, because I want to make sure the tips do not get exposed to the air, lest they create a possibility for shorting or electrocution or whatever. Okay, alright, I've got the capacitors attached to the two copper coils that are alongside the open, bare, zinc-plated iron coil. The two copper coils are closed because they form a closed loop between the two capacitors. And this thing slides. If I can get it to do it with one hand. It slides readily. As you can see, just gravity alone. Anyway, it slides very readily. Then I have one side that's going to be my ground connection. And basically the circuit is done. Unless I need an aerial, a whip antenna attached to the top of this to help accentuate the grounded end over here, in case it's not enough voltage difference. I want to be doubtful for the sake of safety, but it could happen that it may not be a long enough tube, or all I have to do is extend it with a piece of wire up from up here. But this is just proof of concept. If the voltage should get high enough for this to light up even faintly at night, then that would be a surefire indication it's free energy because it's running off of atmospheric charge. Okay, here's my magic wand from yesterday. And it's good that I stopped at this point because I really needed to think about what I was going to do next. So this is the base that goes to ground, and the top should go to an extended aerial to increase the voltage difference between the two ends, or else it probably won't light up. So what I'm guessing is that for the extension, there's another principle of substitution for an elevated mast or aerial in order to increase voltage, and that's surface area of a metallic object. So if I attach the top of that magic wand fluorescent bulb circuit to the chassis of my electric vehicle, it should increase the voltage difference between the vehicle and ground with the magic wand in between. The reason is we can go back to precedents. Helmholtz, Heinrich Helmholtz, he invented the spark transmitter, and the way he devised it, Mitko Gorgiev on Quora did a whole series on this, in which what Helmholtz did is he had a grounded aerial without having to go to ground. The way you do that is you take your ground connection and you elevate it and separate it. This is what the Amman brothers did with their two copper spheres. They had a grounded aerial, because if you have two surface areas that are separated from each other, you have a grounded aerial. It doesn't matter whether or not one of those two surface areas goes to ground, earth ground, just so long as you have two separate surface areas that are separated in space. And Helmholtz decided to take two plates and extend them in opposite directions away from each other and from the circuit in between. And then he had two lines, single lines, connecting the plates to two little spheres that were brought close together, and that was his spark gap, that formed the base frequency upon which his spark transmitter operated. And then he modulated that sparking base with his voice, or no, I believe a telegraph key. So he modulated it with a square wave coming from a telegraph key, or a surge wave. I don't know. It may not have been a square wave. In any case, And when I was up in Washington State back in 2014, 2013, between 2013 and 2015, I bought from somebody locally a very interesting negative ion generator in which the human becomes the negative electrode. I guess that's the cathode, if unless I'm mistaken. Um, because he gives you a little uh, stainless steel plate just big enough to put your 2 feet on, and you're supposed to turn it on before you put your feet on it. Now, there's no switch to turn it on, and the DC or the AC to DC converter that you're supposed to buy on your own. It doesn't come with the unit. And I think it steps up the voltage to like 10,000 volts. I don't know. I can't remember. Thousands of volts. And so you plug it in before you put your feet on, because if you plug it in with your feet on it, but it's not plugged in yet, as your hand holds the plug and approaches the wall outlet, you will get electrocuted. It's very mild, and that's amazing because you haven't touched anything to ground. Imagine what would happen if you did, you know. I was not standing in a puddle of water on the earth. I was standing in a cabin whose flooring was elevated off the earth, so I had no direct pathway to ground except for the few inches, the few millimeters, the several millimeters between my hand and the wall outlet, the grounding port on the wall outlet, and also the neutral port as well. Because what happened was, actually, no, it was already plugged in. That was it. So it was already on, it was already plugged in, my feet were on the plate, and I reached for the plug to unplug it. I think that was it. I can't remember which way it was, because it was already charged up, so it had to have been already plugged in. Anyway, my hand touching the electric outlet, it's plastic, right? So I thought it was safe. Ooh, not good. Plastic is a dielectric, unlike wood or paper or cardboard. It stores a charge. And electrical engineers are erroneously taught that no, the charge is in the plates. The plates have the polarization of charge, but they do not have the charge themselves. The charge is in the dielectric sandwiched in between the two plates. Because of the presence of the two plates on opposite sides creating polarization. That's all they do. They guide the polarization so that you can have the charge in the dielectric, but it's not in the plates. It's transferred to the plates because they're conductive, but it's not stored there. The only things stored in the plates are eddy currents, the magnetic field of the eddy currents taking place, but not the electrostatic charge. That's in the dielectric. So, the plastic surrounding the plug was charged. I touched it with my hand near the outlet, and I created an pre-ionizing lightning bolt arcing channel between the copper wire on the inside of the plug, the plastic dielectric surrounding it, and my conductive hand and the conductive air leading to the grounding port on the electric wall outlet. So I got a mild charge, a shock, and I was surprised, but I had to learn the hard way how these things work. So oh yeah, and then I did another thing. The charge of that device is based on the square area of that plate and the square area of yourself when you stand on it or you put it under your feet. Let's say you're sitting. Had he computed differently on a different surface area, he would have changed the circuitry to build up less charge. Let's say if you had increased surface area, because increased surface area increases charge. So what I did was, I'm such a devilish guy. You can tell I played with fire when I was a kid, and played with electricity when I was a kid. This is when I'm older. I'm just, So what I did was I had a full-size bed upon which was a grounding sheet. If you know anything about earthing, it's about connecting the body to the earth when you sleep at night, and that only works if the ground is not polluted with electrosmog. if it's got electrosmog, you're not going to like it. It's not going to be settling. It's going to be disturbing. So in an urban environment, it does not work. Even if you don't use the grounding port on your electric outlet and get disturbed from the AC 60 cycle or 55, whatever it is, because that cycle weakens your heart rate. Your heart muscle gets weaker and weaker, and you end up getting a pacemaker like Rosita Zucker did, the wife of Marty Zucker, who co-wrote the book Earthing with Clint Ober. um, even if you do that, it's not good enough, because if you live in the city, forget it. You have to live in the country, separated by, let's say, 100 yards from the nearest building that has a live connection to the grid. Because it's very disturbing when all of that excess voltage goes into the earth and propagates. Anyway, so what I did was I had this bed sheet and I connected it not to ground, but to the device instead of the plate. And when I got in it naked to sleep at night, I got a shock. And I'm telling you, it was a big, nasty shock. If you can imagine the shock you get shuffling your bare feet across the rug in the wintertime and touching the doorknob on the door, this was magnified above and beyond that. Not enough to harm me, but enough to give me a bit of a fright. But so long as I kept touching the bedsheet, I was fine. It was just initially, right? Because now my body is elevated to that level of charge that the bedsheet now possesses due to the machinery being connected to the bedsheet and thus to me. So I was sleeping at a much elevated voltage level, and that brings to mind what Aaron Murakami shared with us, that there are hidden genes that in our DNA that harks back to the days when the Earth was smaller, had a higher negative charge at surface area, and Patagonia was a solid continent. It didn't break up yet because the Earth was smaller, so there's no need for it to break up. And the gravity was less because gravity is based on, um, apparently, on weakening of the negative charge at the center of the Earth, the spherical capacitor in the center of the hollow Earth. So the dinosaurs could get away with being big because the gravity was less. We should really call it electrogravitics, but whatever. So I was doing that. I was creating that condition, and it's pretty cool. So somebody did experiments by growing corn seed and other seeds, sprouting them in an elevated electrostatic field. And amazingly, it grew faster, it went to harvest quicker, and it was a little shorter, but it was hardier, it was healthier, because all of that electrostatic charge, it's electricity. Um, Now, when Frankenstein charges up his dead corpse with a lightning bolt, that's the wrong way to do it, because that's how you kill people. The correct way is you have to immerse that corpse in a field of elevated electrostatics, and then now you're getting in the direction of doing it properly, although you're still not necessarily going to revive a dead corpse that way. But it's at least you're not going to kill it once it's if it were to come alive. Anyway, so if I connect the top end of my magic wand to this chassis of this dead electric car, because the battery pack is connected to common ground, namely the chassis, it may revive that dead battery pack over time, just because it's massaging it with a varying voltage that's connected by a single wire connection to the grounding terminal on the battery pack, which I would imagine is similar to the auxiliary battery under the hood, which currently there is no battery under the hood. So, because I took it out because it was dead and useless. And rather than buy a new one, I just left it empty. But anyway, it may help to light up my little magic wand. And that's here. And I did a diagram of this magic wand back in 2019 or earlier, in which it's like the the top of the staff of Asclepius, in which you have, the snakes, the two snakes twining around a center staff, and at the top you have a sphere, and out of the sphere you have two wings. Well, those two wings and that sphere is the third eye, composed of two chakra petals, Ha and Ksha. Well, getting into that, that's what that represents. It's the spinal cord. The Ida and the Pingala are the two entwined snakes, and the Sushumna up the middle is the rod staff up the middle, and then the ball and the wings on top is the third eye. Well, why did I bring this up? Oh, so I did a schematic back in the day in which a single module of Eric Dollar's analog computer in LMD mode kind of looks like that, because you have your two wings, the two capacitors, sticking out from two connections across the top and bottom that are your conductive connections, which, because they're conductive, that makes them automatically inductive, just not very strong if they're not coiled into a coil shape, but it still does have a very weak inductance because it's conductive. Well, this bulb is conductive, but anyway, I have two coils in here that are closed because they connect the two sides of these two capacitors, creating a single module of Eric Dollar's analog computer in LMD mode. When looked at this way, and if you were to connect another one sideways, daisy chain it, no, actually, it would be this way. Right, because you'd couple the two coils of the next module, adjacent coils, together. Anyway, in this case, the coils are inductively coupled to the gas within the tube. Now, I'm thinking I need to make one modification to this, because fluorescent bulbs don't light up very readily. That's why they usually have a ballast. But neon bulbs don't need one, because they light up very readily. And one alternative to having a ballast on a fluorescent bulb is to have a neon bulb connected to it. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to connect a neon bulb to probably, yes, this end, the top end. So I'll put a neon bulb extended off the top of this that will then go to my car, and then the base will go to ground. I have a grounding wire. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see if we can zoom in here. It's wrapped around the metal pipe, the electric conduit, the electric, there it is. You see it? See the wire? I have it wrapped around, if I can steady the camera, I have it wrapped around the pipe up there, and then it comes down, and I have an alligator clip at the end of it. So I'll be able to ground the base of this magic wand of mine, and then connect the top end to a neon bulb, and then the other end of the neon bulb will go to my car. I have a wire coming out of the chassis at the bottom of the car, wherein I had put a grounding strap to ground the car to the earth, if perchance it should run over concrete instead of asphalt. Sometimes asphalt is semiconductive, not all the time. Or if it's raining, the water on the ground will ground out the car. I do need to add air to the tires now that I think of it, but I haven't had the opportunity to do that. I should, so that the tires don't become deformed. Anyway, so I'm going to perform this experiment and see if I can light up the neon bulb and fluorescent bulb, and hopefully not blow it up with glass all over the place, because I'm grounding one side to the earth. But I will be elevating that neutralization by adding extra surface area, because grounded to the earth is probably not going to light up. It's just going to, there's no reason for it to create a voltage difference between the top of the fluorescent bulb and the base that's grounded, unless I add additional metallic surface area as an alternative to an elevated mast. So those are your two options. You can use an aerial, an elevated mast, or you can use simply a large body of metallic substance with large surface area, not volume, so much as the surface area. Now, Tesla connected his special generator to the base of, he magnetically coupled it to the base of the battery room in the Electro U-boat. Or he didn't do it, maybe it was Dort who advised the Germans, whatever. And you get this connection, magnetic connection, to the hull of the vessel, which is a huge surface area. So it's not just the mass of the iron. See, William Lyne quoted Tesla as saying, for every 200 pounds of iron added to a special generator, 1 horsepower was added to its output. It may not be that. Maybe Tesla was misleading us because he didn't want us to know the truth of the matter. It may not be the mass of the iron that's significant. It may be the surface area of that conductive metallic substance that's significant because it increases voltage of his device. Not bad. You know, you got to have some voltage, right? You got to provide that, but you increase it. So that's probably the correct way to interpret that phrase. Anyway, I thought I'd give you a heads up what I'm going to do before I do it, and then I'll do it, and then, I don't know, I may add another video if necessary, if I'm successful. If I'm a failure, I don't, I get embarrassed, and then I don't want to come online and say, oh, it was a failure. I just don't show you any success, and that's usually the way I operate. So if you've seen some of my other video casts in the past, I don't show you any success. I just show you I'm building something like that cardboard slat. I was working on the Amon Brothers, and I had various gizmos filled with solutions and whatnot, and I had carbon rods made out of pencil lead, and it wasn't successful, so I didn't show you anything. I'm telling you now. um, during my next experiment, I'm telling you the previous one was not successful. Now I'm bringing you up to speed. Okay, enough said. Okay, now I have my 2 connections at either end of the fluorescent bulb. One will go to ground, and the other will go to my substitute for a elevated mast, namely a large surface area of metallic substance, conductive substance. And I have my little neon bulb that I'm going to use to connect to one of these ends. I wonder if it would be an advantage to connect it to both ends. No, it has to be the non-grounded end, because the ground is not going to help matters any. Or will it? Well, when you think about it, the ground might be better, because the ground will be 0, and then the neon bulb will be in between 0 and the fluorescent. Meanwhile, the fluorescent will be the extension of the car at the other end. The most voltage will be at the car. So if anything, I should probably put the neon bulb attached to the car. Only one wire, and let the other wire stand out as a kind of aerial. That would be the smart thing to do. Yeah, actually. Yeah, that's right. So I guess I'll tape this to somewhere on the car. Maybe at the opposite end, maybe the front end, because I'm going to attach the fluorescent bulb to the back end. Yeah, and then I have to test it with my little circuit tester to make sure it has conductivity between those 2 points, which will take a long wire to do that. I might try a different position. Maybe the hub of the hubcap of the tire. So it'll have to go through the axle and the suspension of the car to get to the hubcap of the tire, the lug nuts. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll find some place other than the same place. Maybe not at the opposite end of the car, because that'll be too difficult for me. Okay, I'll do it that way. Right. This point here is a bad point because it's so rusted, it's not conductive. So, ouch. I had to go to something that was conductive, such as this loop here in the door, and also another alternative are these screws on the back end of the door or the side of the door. They're conductive to each other, and even though this wire is slightly rusted, that connection down below is so rusted it's useless. So I'm going to connect to the car at this point here. Close the door. So now I have my wire connection. And so I'm going to take the neon bulb off the hubcap and attach it to, oh yeah, where do I attach it? Oh, I guess I have to have two wires. One goes to here, that's right. And then the other one has to go to here, or something inside the door. Except that's not going to be a rigorous separation unless I go to a different door. I'll have to go to a different door. I'll go to the door in front. That's what I'll do. So this will be one connection, and then I'll come over here to this door, and I'll make another connection to this loop, and that should work. I haven't tested yet, but it should have a continuity between them. That should work. So, I have a wire connecting to the loop of the back door on the right side of the car, and then I close the door, and the wire comes up and is connected to one leg of the neon bulb, and then I have it taped to the window here so it's away from the car metallic surface, and I have just this wire sticking up. You can probably see it sticking up from away from the glass. So that's the top of my so-called substitute for an elevated mast. And then I have the front door connected to that loop, its loop, with an alligator clip. I ran out of alligator clips, so I'm trying to make do here. Can't find my other alligator clips. I don't know where they're hiding. So now I have to connect the magic wand to ground and to where? There's the rub. It should be the other side of the car. Oh. Oh dear. No, it's this. Right, yeah. No, it'll connect to this. And then I have the wire coming down. That's my other alligator clip. Which goes up to the pipe that has the electrical conduit. And I'm assuming the electric pipe or the metallic pipe is grounded to the earth. That's an assumption on my part. Let's hope that it is. I don't have any way of testing it, really. I mean, yeah, whatever. They usually are. So I have one end of my magic wand connected to the car, which the car then goes to the neon bulb. And the other end of the fluorescent bulb goes to the wire that goes to the supposedly grounded pipe of electrical conduit that goes to the light that's in this storage unit. And we don't see anything lighting up, but maybe we need darkness to see anything. I don't know. Or maybe it's not going to happen, or maybe it'll take time to build up a voltage difference. But I will leave it alone, and we'll see what happens. As you can see, I've taped the capacitor to the middle of the bulb instead of letting it slide down due to gravity to the bottom end, because the bottom end is the grounded end, and I don't want it there. So I chose somewhere in the middle. And I also added some tape up here to make sure that wire is not touching the car, but is insulated. Well, it is touching the car anyway. Whatever.